Last defense at Holy Ground, Creek War, Alabama, 1813. No white man's bullet can harm us here. These were the words that echoed through the Creek territory in 1813, spoken by their prophets with unwavering conviction. The Holy Ground, a name that carried both promise and warning, stood as a fortress between the Alabama River and Holy Ground Creek. The Creek prophets, including several Shawnee warriors who had traveled south to rally their allies, had declared this sacred ground impenetrable to white men's weapons. They transformed it into more than just a military stronghold. It became a symbol of Native American resistance, a place they boldly named the Grave of White Men. Welcome to Native Legends and History Stories, where we uncover the forgotten chapters of America's past. If you're passionate about discovering the untold stories of Native warfare, prophecies, and the battles that shaped our nation, hit subscribe and join us as we journey through history's most compelling moments. In December 1813, the faith of the Creek Nation would face its greatest test. General Claiborne, leading a formidable force of 1,000 soldiers, began his advance into Creek territory in southern Alabama. His army comprised the elite 3rd Regiment of U.S. Infantry, Major Castle's skilled cavalry battalion, Major Smoot's determined militia forces, and perhaps most notably the Choctaw Warriors, led by the legendary Chief Pushmataha. The campaign began on November 10th, when General Flournoy dispatched urgent orders to Claiborne. The situation was dire. General Jackson's forces were battling not just the Creeks, but the specter of starvation itself. More in dread of famine than of Indians, Jackson had written, emphasizing that without supplies, his entire campaign would collapse. Claiborne's mission was clear: establish a crucial supply depot at Weatherford's Bluff, deep in enemy territory. On November 13th, the Army broke camp at Pine Level, their spirits high despite the challenges ahead. The troops, energized by the prospect of an active campaign toward Pensacola, marched across Clark County with determination. The Choctaw Battalion, under Pushmataha's command, made a strategic stop at Fort Madison, where they received 20 new rifles, weapons that would soon prove their worth. By November 16th, Claiborne's forces reached the Alabama River, facing Weatherford's Bluff across the waters. The entire army crossed using rafts, a meticulous operation that demonstrated their logistical prowess. Without wasting time, Claiborne initiated the construction of a formidable military installation. The new fortress took shape, a massive 200-foot square stockade, reinforced with 3 strategic blockhouses and a half-moon battery commanding the river. This engineering marvel, completed in just 10 days, would bear the name Fort Claiborne, a name that the town still carries to this day. From this strategic position, 35 miles above Mims, Claiborne executed a brilliant tactical plan. His forces effectively cut off the Creek Indians from both the river and their vital crops, while simultaneously threatening their supply lines to Pensacola. The fort became more than just a supply depot. It was a statement of military power and strategic control. Colonel Russell's 3rd U.S. Infantry joined forces with the Georgia troops, strengthening their position further. Multiple excursions into Creek territory had already created uncertainty among the native forces. Pushmataha, proving invaluable to the American cause, led 51 of his warriors, alongside Lieutenant Callahan's volunteers, on critical missions to disrupt enemy communications with Pensacola. With Fort Claiborne established and fortified, General Claiborne now commanded a strategic military position in Creek territory. The 51 Choctaw warriors under Pushmataha had begun their operations to intercept Creek communications with Pensacola, while Colonel Russell's forces strengthened the American military presence in the region. Meanwhile, the Creek Holy Ground remained a powerful symbol of native resistance, its prophets still proclaiming their sacred ground impenetrable to white men's weapons. During the Army's encampment at Weatherford's Bluff, Chief Pushmataha executed a strategic night raid. 2 veterans of the Creek War later confirmed that Pushmataha, accompanied by his warriors, tracked enemy movements to Burnt Corn Creek. There, they discovered a Creek encampment. Under the cover of darkness, Pushmataha orchestrated a swift and decisive attack, resulting in multiple enemy casualties. His warriors returned victorious to Claiborne's camp, bearing Creek scalps as testament to their success. Military historians have connected this raid to General Claiborne's documented expedition of 51 warriors dispatched toward Pensacola, suggesting they were one and the same mission. The American military presence strengthened significantly on November 28, 1813, with the arrival of Colonel Gilbert C. Russell at Fort Claiborne. Russell brought with him the full complement of the 3rd Regiment U.S. Infantry, a development Claiborne had long anticipated. This reinforcement marked a turning point in their operational capabilities. 7 days later, on December 5th, General Claiborne composed 2 crucial correspondences. The first, addressed to General Jackson, offered congratulations on recent victories and provided a comprehensive report on the Southern campaign's progress. Most importantly, it confirmed the availability of substantial corn and provision supplies near Fort Claiborne, critical intelligence for Jackson's resource-strained forces. The second correspondence, directed to Governor Blunt, carried more concerning news. Claiborne reported an increasing British presence in Pensacola, with multiple vessels arriving at the port. His frustration was evident as he characterized Pensacola as that sink of iniquity, a stronghold for Tories and instigators disrupting the southern frontier. His assessment was soon validated by Major Kennedy's intelligence mission to Mobile. Colonel Boyer's report confirmed extensive British activity. Large quantities of Indian supplies were flowing through the port, accompanied by significant troop movements. The situation grew more dire as Creek forces intensified their raids in Baldwin County, where they successfully destroyed both Kennedy's and Burns Mills. The command structure underwent changes during this period. Lieutenant Colonel George Henry Nixon assumed control at Mount Vernon following Russell's departure. Responding to the escalating threats, Nixon requested and received Claiborne's authorization to establish a garrison at Fort Pierce, positioned strategically near the areas experiencing disturbances. As 1813 approached its end, Claiborne achieved a significant diplomatic victory by securing General Flournoy's authorization for an ambitious advance into Creek territory. His objective was Econochaca, the Holy Ground, situated 120 miles north of Fort Claiborne. This decision, however, sparked immediate controversy within his command structure. A group of his officers, though expressing deep loyalty to both their government and Claiborne personally, felt compelled to voice their concerns through formal channels. They submitted a detailed written memorial outlining their objections to the proposed expedition. Their arguments were grounded in practical military considerations. The onset of winter had brought challenging wet conditions. The territory they needed to traverse remained unmapped and untamed. Their supply lines would be severely compromised by the lack of established roads. Most critically, they reported that their troops lacked essential winter supplies. No adequate clothing, no proper footwear, and no blankets to protect against the elements. The officers raised an additional logistical challenge that threatened the entire mission's viability. A significant portion of their forces would complete their terms of service before the expedition could reach its conclusion. These officers, speaking from years of military experience, respectfully requested that Claiborne reconsider and potentially abandon the proposed campaign. Yet despite these serious reservations, the memorial concluded with an extraordinary declaration of loyalty. Regardless of Claiborne's ultimate decision, they pledged to cheerfully obey his orders and execute his strategic vision. Their response reflected a remarkable balance between professional duty and practical military wisdom, demonstrating both the severe challenges facing the expedition and the unwavering dedication of Claiborne's officer corps. The document served as powerful testimony to both the daunting obstacles confronting the campaign and the professional character of the American military leadership during this pivotal period of the Creek War. The hardships faced by Claiborne's men during this campaign tested the limits of human endurance. Their suffering was profound, yet their spirit remained unbroken. Forced to traverse treacherous swamps and dense cane brakes in inclement weather, they lacked the most basic necessities. No tents for shelter, no warm clothes for protection, no proper shoes for the harsh terrain. For 9 consecutive days, they went without meat, sustaining themselves only on parched corn. Each face bore the visible marks of their ordeal, yet not a single complaint was heard. These brave men would go on to win a decisive battle, accepting the extreme demands of their service with unwavering dedication. On December 13th, the army departed Fort Claiborne, commencing their march toward the Creek Nation's holy ground. The assembled force represented one of the most diverse and formidable military contingents of the campaign. Colonel Russell commanded the disciplined ranks of the 3rd Regiment of U.S. Infantry. Major Cassell led his skilled battalion of cavalry, while Major Smoot directed his battalion of militia, a unit that included the capable Patrick May as adjutant, with Dale and Hurd serving as captains. Colonel Carson commanded the committed 12-month Mississippi Territory Volunteers. Adding crucial native expertise to this force, Chief Pushmataha led a battalion of 150 Choctaw warriors. Together, these combined forces amounted to approximately 1,000 men, each component bringing unique strengths to the campaign. After several grueling days of marching in a northeastern direction, the army reached the southern edge of Double Swamp, in what would later be designated as Butler County. At this strategic location, General Claiborne established a crucial supply point called Fort Deposit. The fort served as a secure base where he strategically positioned 100 men to guard essential military assets, the Army's wagons, artillery pieces, baggage trains, and most importantly, to care for the sick who could not continue the advance. On the morning of December 22nd, the main force resumed their challenging march through the pathless wilderness. By late afternoon, after a full day's march, they established camp within 10 miles of their objective, the Holy Ground. The Holy Ground itself was a site of immense spiritual and strategic significance. As described by A.B. Meek, it stretched along the southern bank of the Alabama River, occupying the fertile land between Penslola and Big Swamp Creeks in what would later become Lowndes County. This wasn't simply a military position. It was the sacred residence of the Creek Nation's principal prophets, who had ceremonially consecrated the ground against white intrusion. The prophets had created mystical circles around its borders, convincing their people that any enemy who dared step upon this hallowed soil would face immediate supernatural destruction. So powerful was this belief that they named it, with absolute conviction, the Grave of White Men. The natural beauty of the location was unmatched in the region, particularly during springtime when lush vegetation covered the landscape. Within this territory, the Creek people had established significant settlements that demonstrated their sophisticated social organization. Near the mouth of Penslola, a thriving village of 80 carefully constructed wigwams stood as testament to their architectural skills. More impressive still was the chief town, located several miles downstream, which contained 200 substantial houses. This settlement served as the governmental center of the Alabama tribe, housing their crucial council house where tribal leaders made decisions affecting the entire nation. The chief town, specifically designated as the Holy Ground, would become the focal point of intense military action. This settlement wasn't merely a collection of dwellings. It represented the very heart of Creek sovereignty and resistance. The location's strategic value complemented its spiritual significance. Positioned along the river, it allowed the Creeks to control vital waterways and maintain essential supply routes. The council house stood as both a practical governmental center and a powerful symbol of Creek independence, making the Holy Ground the embodiment of both their spiritual beliefs and their determination to resist encroachment on their territory. General Claiborne organized his forces into 3 strategic columns for the assault. The center column, under his personal command with Colonel Russell, comprised the battle-hardened 3rd Regiment of U.S. Infantry, reinforced by Lester's Guards and Wells Dragoons serving as their reserve force. The right flank consisted of the Mississippi Territory Volunteers, soldiers who had committed to 12-month terms, led by Colonel Carson. Major Smoot commanded the left column, which combined his battalion of militia with Pushmataha's formidable force of Choctaw warriors. Claiborne's battle plan aimed to completely encircle the enemy. He directed Colonel Carson to strike the town's upper side, while Major Castle's riflemen were ordered to secure positions along the riverbank west of the town, preventing any Creek forces from escaping downstream. With these tactical assignments distributed, the army began its advance toward the Holy Ground. To ensure proper coordination, the central column advanced a short distance before halting, allowing time for the flanking columns to maneuver into their designated positions. Colonel Carson's column faced immediate challenges executing their orders. General Claiborne had intended for Carson's forces to cross Holy Ground Creek and advance down its right bank, positioning them perfectly to strike the town's upper side. However, an impenetrable reed break blocked their intended path, forcing Carson to maintain his advance along the creek's left bank. The soldiers endured brutal conditions during their approach. On this bitterly cold day, Carson's men struggled for nearly a mile through waterlogged terrain. The level pine forest had become a shallow swamp, with water depths varying from 6 inches to 2 feet. Their progress was painfully slow as they slogged through the frigid water, maintaining formation despite the challenging conditions. As Carson's troops finally reached firmer ground, the first sounds of battle reached their ears. The Holy Ground erupted with the thunderous war cries of Creek warriors, accompanied by the ominous beating of their war drums, clear signals that the Indians had detected their approach. Carson's column would be the first to engage the enemy, making contact around midday as they came within view of the town. The Creek forces had prepared a sophisticated ambush. A branch stream crossed Carson's line of advance as they neared the town. Behind a massive fallen log that ran parallel to this stream, a substantial force of Creek warriors had established their position. The log provided excellent cover, and they had positioned themselves on the side facing Carson's approaching troops. Debate remains whether this was the Spot Spring branch or the hollow beyond, though evidence suggests the latter. The battle erupted when Carson's men, now formed in battle line, came within range. The Creek warriors unleashed a devastating volley of rifle fire from their concealed position. The American troops immediately returned fire while maintaining a steady advance. Using every available tree and stump as cover, they gradually closed the distance. Weatherford, commanding the Creek forces, directed his warriors to hold their position with determined resistance. The Creek defense incorporated multiple layers. Behind their frontline riflemen, on the branch's western bank, a significant force of warriors armed with bows maintained a constant barrage of arrows toward the American lines. Though their arrows consistently overshot their targets, falling harmlessly behind Carson's forces, the volume of fire added to the battle's intensity. In the midst of these bowmen, a Creek prophet created an extraordinary spectacle. Frantically moving among the warriors, he brandished 2 cowtails dyed bright red, one in each hand, while unleashing terrifying war cries that pierced through the sounds of battle. The Creek prophet continued his frenzied performance among the warriors, alternating between wild gestures and taking cover behind a nearby cabin, only to emerge again with renewed vigor. The tide of battle began to turn when American soldiers executed a brilliant tactical maneuver. Making an oblique movement, they managed to outflank the log fortification, subjecting the Creek warriors to devastating enfilading fire. This successful maneuver inflicted significant casualties among the Creek forces, though some American soldiers were also wounded in the exchange. Under this intense crossfire, the Creek warriors were forced to abandon their strong position and retreat across the branch. However, they maintained their resistance, taking up new defensive positions behind trees and fallen timber, continuing to engage the American forces. The initial phase of the battle had lasted approximately 30 minutes when reinforcements began arriving on the battlefield. Major Castle's forces had encountered an unexpected obstacle. An extensive marsh connecting to a large swamp blocked their intended path to the western side of the town. Unable to reach their assigned position, they were forced to fall back and join Carson's regiment. Meanwhile, the 3rd Regiment, Major Smoot's battalion, and Pushmata's Choctaw warriors had successfully positioned themselves in front of the Holy Ground. With American forces now converging from multiple directions, the Creek defenses began to crumble. A pivotal moment occurred when a soldier named Gatlin from Carson's command made a shot that would become legendary in the battle's history. Taking careful aim with his musket braced against a tree, he fired at the Creek prophet who had been rallying the warriors. The shot proved lethal. The ball shattered the prophet's arm and pierced his chest, killing him instantly. Until this point, Colonel Carson had deliberately restrained his men's advance, hoping to maintain pressure on the enemy while waiting for the town to be completely surrounded from creek to river. However, seeing that complete encirclement was no longer possible, he changed tactics. "Boys, you seem keen. Go ahead and drive them," he shouted to his eager troops. The soldiers responded with immediate and aggressive action, pushing the retreating Creek warriors back into the town. The battle now transformed into a full retreat, as Creek warriors fled in multiple directions, many abandoning their weapons in their haste to escape. Despite their retreat, the Creek warriors demonstrated their tribal values by ensuring no wounded comrade was left behind. They carried off every injured warrior unable to escape on their own, a practice that their people considered honorable and essential. Carson's forces pursued the fleeing warriors through the town until they reached a bluff near Holy Ground Creek. The retreat split into multiple directions. Some warriors sought refuge in the neighboring canebrake, while others attempted to cross the river, either by boat or swimming. One poignant moment occurred when a retreating warrior, struck by a mortal wound, fell at the bluff's edge. After a brief struggle against his fatal injury, he rolled down the steep slope. The creek mouth wasn't the only escape route. According to Pickett's historical account, hundreds of Creek warriors managed to slip away along the Alabama River by the town's western border, likely making their escape before the battle's conclusion. Among the last defenders, Chief Weatherford distinguished himself through his leadership and courage. He remained in position until nearly all his warriors had retreated, personally directing the defense until the situation became untenable. Only when most of his forces had withdrawn did he finally consider his own escape, finding himself surrounded above and below, and determining that his only option was to attempt crossing the Alabama River. Weatherford's legendary escape became one of the most dramatic moments of the Creek War. Mounted on an exceptional horse known for both its strength and speed, he guided his steed down a long hollow leading to the river's edge. Upon reaching the riverbank, he encountered a formidable obstacle, a steep bluff rising 12 feet above the water. In that crucial moment, Weatherford assessed his situation with remarkable clarity. Making a swift decision, he backed his horse 30 paces from the bluff's edge. Turning to face the precipice, he spurred his horse forward with a sharp command. The powerful animal responded instantly, accelerating to full gallop. Together, horse and rider launched from the bluff, soaring 20 feet through the air before plunging into the churning waters below. Weatherford's horsemanship proved extraordinary. He maintained his seat throughout the perilous leap. As his horse submerged beneath the surface, he held his rifle high above his head, keeping the weapon dry. The valiant horse immediately began swimming toward the opposite shore, carrying its fearless rider through the swift current. When they had covered about 30 yards from shore, American troops positioned both upstream and downstream opened fire. Bullets peppered the water around them like hailstones, yet remarkably, neither man nor horse sustained any injury. The Creek people would later attribute this miraculous escape to the protection of the Great Spirit. The exact location of this dramatic escape became a subject of historical debate. According to Mr. Sprott, the first American settler on Holy Ground Creek, local tradition identified the northwestern ravine as Weatherford's escape route. However, General Woodward's reminiscences attempted to discredit this account, offering an alternative explanation. Woodward claimed that Weatherford, after initially trying to escape downriver, found his path blocked by soldiers. According to this version, the Creek leader then moved upstream along the bluff until reaching a ravine with a small footpath near the river. Woodward asserted that Weatherford led his horse down this path and followed the ravine to its head, thereby passing around the American lines without making any dramatic leap. However, close examination of Holy Ground's topography reveals serious flaws in Woodward's account. The site contained only 2 ravines, both measuring 200 yards in length and becoming quite shallow near their heads. Neither ravine could have provided the escape route Woodward described. Furthermore, the little branch he referenced was actually Holy Ground Creek itself, which would have been swollen with water during the rainy season battle. Two additional facts further discredit Woodward's version. First, riding or leading a horse up the creek channel would have been impossible given the water conditions. Second, and perhaps most definitively, Carson's forces had already secured the mouth of Holy Ground Creek when Weatherford made his escape, making Woodward's proposed route impassable. The debate over this incident extends beyond mere military history. It speaks to the larger-than-life character of Weatherford himself and the mythic dimensions the Creek War would assume in American memory. The existence of first-hand accounts supporting the dramatic leap, combined with the topographical impossibility of Woodward's alternative explanation, strongly suggests that Weatherford did indeed make this remarkable escape. James Bankston, a member of the pursuit party, provided eyewitness testimony that corroborated the account of Weatherford's daring escape. According to Bankston's detailed recollection, they fired upon Weatherford as he crossed the river. After reaching the far shore and moving beyond rifle range, Weatherford calmly dismounted, removed his saddle, and methodically wrung water from his blankets and other possessions before remounting and riding away. The precision and consistency of Bankston's account, maintained throughout his life, lends substantial credibility to this extraordinary episode. In the aftermath of battle, General Claiborne issued strict orders prohibiting his white troops from looting the Holy Ground. Instead, he granted all spoils to Pushmata's Choctaw warriors as reward for their service. The Choctaws thoroughly ransacked the town, gathering substantial quantities of provisions, clothing, blankets, and silver ornaments. A grim discovery accompanied this plunder. Many of the items, particularly the clothing and blankets, were identified as belonging to the massacred inhabitants of Fort Mims. The captured supplies included between 1,200 and 1,500 bushels of corn. The army retained what they needed for their own use, destroying the remainder to prevent its recapture. Among the most significant finds was a revealing document discovered in Weatherford's house, a letter from Governor Monique to the Creek chiefs, expressing congratulations for their victory at Fort Mims. This letter provided tangible evidence of outside support for the Creek resistance. During the search of the town, a poignant human drama unfolded. John Brown, one of Carson's soldiers, entered a previously looted cabin only to encounter a Creek woman who had somehow escaped detection by the Choctaw pillagers. Unable to speak English, she used gestures to plead for mercy and protection. Brown demonstrated compassion by escorting her to General Claiborne, who ordered that she receive proper care and eventually be reunited with her people when circumstances permitted. Perhaps the most shocking discovery came in the town's public square. There, leaning at a 60-degree angle, stood a tall pine pole displaying 300 scalps taken at Fort Mims. These grisly trophies represented victims of every age, from infants to elderly individuals, creating a horrific spectacle that provoked intense emotions of horror and vengeance among the American troops. After the Choctaws completed their authorized plundering, Claiborne ordered the town burned. During this destruction, a dramatic incident occurred. As soldiers watched the flames consume the settlement, a cabin door burst open and a large mulatto slave attempted to flee. His escape was tragically brief. Multiple rifles and muskets fired simultaneously, killing him instantly. The man was believed to be a runaway who had found refuge among the creeks, choosing to hide rather than face capture. The fire had forced him from his concealment, only to meet immediate death. The battle's casualty figures revealed an intriguing disparity. American forces suffered remarkably light losses, 1 fatality, Ensign Luckett, and 20 wounded. This surprisingly low casualty rate, especially given the enemy's determined resistance, was attributed to the Creek's severe ammunition shortage, which forced many warriors to rely on less lethal bows and arrows. The Creek forces suffered 33 fatalities, comprising 21 Creek warriors and 12 black men. The presence of African American casualties highlighted a unique aspect of this battle. The Creeks had compelled their slaves to participate in the defense, making this the only engagement in the Creek War where enslaved people were forced to fight alongside their masters. The full extent of Creek casualties remained uncertain, as their warriors successfully evacuated all wounded from the battlefield, a testament to their dedication to leaving no one behind. Dr. Neil Smith's account identified several significant losses among the Creek leadership. Among the dead was a Shawnee prophet, believed to be one of the initial instigators of hostilities with the whites. A prominent Creek singer and another leading prophet suffered mortal wounds, the latter dropping a distinctive weapon well known to his adversaries. Historical evidence suggests that the fallen Shawnee prophet was likely the same man brought down by Gatlin's precise shot earlier in the battle. Following Creek military custom, the Choctaw warriors claimed their trophies, scalping all Creek warriors who fell at the holy ground. This battle marked a unique chapter in the Creek War. It stood as the only engagement where slaves fought alongside their Creek masters. This unprecedented decision drew sharp criticism from within the Creek nation itself. Kenny Hodjo, a Creek warrior present at the holy ground, later condemned this choice severely. He argued that the proud Muskogee people had compromised their national dignity by compelling their slaves to fight their battles. Moreover, he noted that this decision particularly enraged the white population, intensifying their existing prejudices against the Creek nation. The American army established camp near the smoking ruins of Holy Ground that night. The following day brought destruction as the victorious forces methodically eliminated every trace of Creek presence in the territory. They targeted not only the primary settlement, but also numerous satellite villages, including one that had served as a gathering point for Creek warriors returning from the Fort Mims massacre, a location later incorporated into Townshend Robinson's plantation. During this campaign of destruction, Pushmataha led a particularly daring operation. A.B. Meek's account describes how the great Choctaw chief, accompanied by 6 warriors, crossed the river by canoe directly under enemy fire. This bold maneuver scattered a larger Creek force and yielded significant supplies and provisions. A parallel account, preserved in Choctaw oral tradition, adds vivid detail to this exploit. According to Mississippi's elderly Choctaws, Pushmataha's party discovered a Creek camp on the river's western bank. Demonstrating remarkable stealth, they approached undetected. The silence broke with Pushmataha's command in both Choctaw and English. "Husa, husa, momabe, momabe, shoot, shoot, kill all, kill all." The surprise attack left several enemies dead, while the survivors fled, abandoning their supplies to the victorious Choctaws. That same afternoon, while cavalry units moved upriver to destroy settlements near Penslala Creek's mouth, they encountered 3 Shawnee warriors. The Shawnees retreated into a dense reed brake, leading to a tense standoff. The American forces surrounded the area and, through an interpreter, offered to spare the Shawnees' lives if they surrendered. Displaying unwavering resolve, the Shawnees rejected all peace offerings. What followed was a fierce 2-hour engagement, as both sides exchanged fire from their positions. The 3 Shawnee warriors demonstrated remarkable courage and tactical discipline in their final stand. They established an effective fighting pattern, advancing to the brake's edge to fire, retreating to reload in safety, then returning to their dangerous position to engage the enemy once more. Despite their valiant resistance, the superior numbers of American forces eventually prevailed, and all 3 Shawnees fell in battle. The sound of this engagement reached Claiborne's camp, prompting him to march his forces in that direction during the night's early hours. The troops made camp at Weatherford's plantation, where they endured a miserable night exposed to cold, driving rain. Christmas Day, 1813, brought no respite. The army continued its mission of destruction across the territory until no military objectives remained. Only then did they begin their return march, first to Fort Deposit, and then over 3 to 4 days to Fort Claiborne. During this return journey, the artillery units periodically fired their cannons, hoping the thunderous reports would discourage any Creek warriors contemplating revenge from following their march. Upon reaching Fort Claiborne, the army began to dissolve. Carson's Mississippi volunteers and cavalry units were mustered out of service, leaving only 60 men whose terms would expire within a month. The conditions these troops had endured revealed the War Department's serious logistical failures. They had served without proper clothing or shoes, and upon discharge, they were owed 8 months' back pay. These volunteers had not only served beyond their committed time, but had remained out of loyalty to General Claiborne. Now they faced long journeys to their distant homes along the Pearl, Amity, and Mississippi rivers without receiving any of their earned wages. The toll of the campaign proved especially severe for General Claiborne himself. He returned home as destitute as his men, his health permanently damaged by the campaign's hardships. The exposure and strain had broken his constitution, leading to his untimely death shortly thereafter. Pushmataha's Choctaw warriors, who had proven such crucial allies, were also mustered out at Fort Claiborne. They began their journey home beyond the Tombigbee, but their return took on a ceremonial character. In every Choctaw village they passed through, they displayed their war trophies, the scalps taken at holy ground, performing traditional war songs and victory dances. These celebrations marked not just their personal triumph, but the defeat of their longtime Creek rivals. The impact of the holy ground victory resonated throughout the frontier. A letter from Thomas Vaughan of St. Stephen's to General Claiborne, dated December 31, 1813, captured the jubilant public reaction. When Ensign Burton arrived at 10 o'clock one night with news of the victory, the response was immediate and explosive. Captain Davis ordered the fort illuminated, and the troops gave 3 cheers at both the front and rear gates, accompanied by a musical performance they named Claiborne's Victory. The celebration spread rapidly through the town as citizens learned the news. Military and civilians alike marched through the streets with musical accompaniment, their joyful shouts echoing from one end of the settlement to the other. The name of Claiborne and his officers resounded everywhere, and expressions of joy lit every face. St. Stephen's had never before witnessed such widespread celebration. The victory at Holy Ground effectively ended the Creek military presence in southern Alabama, marking a decisive turning point in the region's history. The story of Creek resistance extended far beyond the Holy Ground. Their warriors displayed extraordinary military prowess against the forces of Floyd and Jackson across Alabama's battlefields and deep into Florida's treacherous swamps. Even when facing the seemingly limitless resources of the American military, they fought with unwavering determination. Their tactical brilliance and fierce combat skills earned profound respect from historians throughout Mississippi and Alabama. Claiborne's assessment captured their remarkable achievements, noting that the Creek's military accomplishments stood equal to the greatest feats recorded in ancient history. The Holy Ground battlefield itself became a subject of intense historical debate. During an 1894 survey of the site, researchers encountered startling claims in Pickett's History of Alabama. The text alleged that Creek prophets had conducted ritualistic executions, burning white captives and friendly Indians alive at the sacred ground. Most notably, it claimed that Mrs. Sophia Durant and several other half-breeds faced imminent execution by fire when Claiborne's army arrived. However, this sensational account lacks any contemporary verification. The extensive documentation of the battle, including General Claiborne's official report, N.H. Claiborne's comprehensive 1819 war notes, Dr. Neil Smith's first-hand battle account, and Reverend John Brown's detailed recollections, makes no mention of such incidents. General Pleasant Porter of the Creek Nation provided compelling cultural evidence against these claims. Speaking from deep knowledge of Creek traditions, he explained their complex spiritual beliefs surrounding death. The Creek people viewed unburied bodies as powerful supernatural threats, believing that the spirits of the dead could bring danger and disruption to the living. This belief was so fundamental that they maintained special burial details, tasked with interring the dead as quickly as possible. The very concept of ritual torture contradicted their core religious principles. They believed a dying person's spirit could exact immediate vengeance before burial, making such practices unthinkable within Creek culture. The battle's toll continued long after the gunfire ceased. General Claiborne, whose strategic brilliance and leadership proved instrumental in the victory, never fully recovered from the campaign's brutal conditions. His health steadily declined until his death in 1815, a mere 2 years after the battle. Colonel Carson, who commanded the Mississippi Volunteers during their crucial first engagement with Creek forces, survived only until 1817. These losses represented just a fraction of the human cost. Countless soldiers, warriors, and civilians on both sides sacrificed everything in this pivotal conflict. The Holy Ground's legacy transcends simple victory or defeat. It marked a critical turning point in Southern history, fundamentally altering the relationship between Creek people and the expanding American nation. The fierce defense of this sacred site, the complex interplay of military strategy and spiritual beliefs, and the remarkable courage displayed by all participants created a historical narrative that continues to reveal new layers of understanding. The battle demonstrated both the heights of human courage and the devastating costs of cultural conflict. The Creek warriors' defense of their sacred ground, the American soldiers' determination through harsh conditions, the Choctaw Allies' crucial role, and the controversial aftermath all paint a complex picture of a pivotal moment in American history. The spirit of those who fought there, their bravery, their sacrifices, and their unwavering dedication to their respective causes remains an indelible part of Alabama's historical landscape. Thanks for watching. Native Legends and History Stories uncovers the powerful, untold stories of America's past. Every battle, every decision, every sacrifice shaped the nation we know today. Subscribe now to journey through history's most compelling moments.